The lecture hall of the Galactic University of Diplomatic Affairs buzzed with the sounds of 30 different species settling into their seats. Some slithered, some floated, and others walked on various numbers of limbs. The air was filled with a mix of sweet and sour scents that the building's atmosphere system struggled to neutralize. Zixthorn, a tall blue-skinned cephalian with 4 arms and a ridge of small tentacles where hair would be on a human, tapped his data tablet impatiently. His large purple eyes blinked in sets of 2 as he scanned the room. This was the class he had been waiting for all semester. Interspecies Combat Ethics with Professor Murdoch. Do you think he will actually cover the human section today? Zixthorn whispered to his friend sitting next to him. Clavex, an Antherian, with silvery skin that reflected light like polished metal, flicked her antenna in what her species considered a shrug. Doubtful. No professor has ever covered that section. It is always restricted material that we cannot access. But why? Zixthorn's tentacles rippled with frustration. We have studied the military tactics of every known intelligent species in the galaxy. The Vargon swarm attacks, the Pelleran psychic sieges, even the extinct Dovenar's planet-cracking technology. What could possibly be so dangerous about humans that we cannot even discuss them? Clavex was about to respond when the classroom door slid open with a soft hiss. Professor Murdoch floated into the room. The ancient Delphian was nearly 300 years old, with skin that had faded from the vibrant green of youth to a pale, almost translucent shade. His hover chair carried him to the center of the lecture platform. Today, the professor's voice resonated through the chamber, amplified by both technology and his species' natural ability to project sound. We conclude our study of galactic warfare with an examination of the justified conflict doctrine as established in the Treaty of the Seven Systems. Zixthorn raised one of his 4 hands. The professor nodded in his direction. Professor, according to the course outline, we were supposed to cover human military doctrine today. The room fell silent. Even the constant background hum of breathing apparatus used by methane-based life forms seemed to quiet. Professor Murdoch's eyes narrowed, the inner membrane sliding halfway across his large eyes. That section of the outline was an error in the system, he said firmly. Human military doctrine is restricted by Galactic Alliance Treaty 5291, subsection 42. But why? Zixthorn pressed. Humans are allowed to travel the galaxy now. They have embassies on 12 worlds. I have even heard they have a small number of exchange students in various universities. Why is their military history forbidden knowledge? The professor's hover chair drifted closer to Zixthorn. There are 3 types of species in this galaxy, he said in a low voice that nonetheless carried throughout the room. Those who have never fought humans, those who have fought humans once, and those who no longer exist. A ripple of unease moved through the classroom. In the back row, a figure shifted slightly. Lisa Wright sat very still, her plain features and brown hair making her almost invisible among the more colorful and unusual alien students. Her human appearance was remarkable only in how unremarkable it was in this setting. No one had noticed her small intake of breath at the professor's words. But humans are physically unimpressive, Clavex joined in. They have no natural weapons, no enhanced senses, no exceptional strength or speed. Their technology was centuries behind the galactic standard when they were first contacted. The data shows their home planet is not even particularly hostile compared to evolution crucibles like Darthos or the methane storms of Urklan. Professor Murdoch's hover chair returned to the center of the platform. This discussion is closed. We will continue with the justified conflict doctrine as scheduled. Lisa Wright watched carefully as Zixthorn's tentacles rippled with what she recognized as determination. She had been observing him for weeks, noting his persistent interest in human affairs. As one of only 12 humans permitted to study off-world under the strict diplomatic protocols established after the event, she was trained to identify potential security issues. After class, Zixthorn and Clavex lingered in the corridor outside the lecture hall. This makes no sense, Zixthorn said. We have studied species that can tear apart starships with their minds, species that evolved in radiation zones that would kill most life forms instantly. What could be so dangerous about humans? Clavex's metallic skin rippled as she considered. Perhaps it is not what they can do but what they have done. I am going to find out, Zixthorn declared. The restricted archives might have something. Those are under top security, Clavex warned. No student has access. Zixthorn's 4 hands gestured excitedly. But you can mimic authorization patterns with your skin. You showed me how you practiced matching Dean Vosslar's pattern last semester. Clavex's antenna flattened against her head. That was just an exercise. I would never actually use it to learn? To understand why an entire species is considered too dangerous to even study? Zixthorn leaned closer. Are we not here to learn about the galaxy? All of it? Lisa Wright, pretending to study her data tablet nearby, caught every word of their conversation. She should report this immediately to her liaison, but something held her back. Perhaps it was her own curiosity about how these aliens perceived her species. That night, as the triple moons of Galactus Prime rose over the universities, gleaming towers, Zixthorn and Clavex made their way through the empty corridors toward the restricted archives. Clavex's skin rippled and shifted, gradually taking on the authorization pattern they had observed Dean Vosslar using earlier that day. I still think this is a terrible idea, Clavex whispered as they approached the security scanner. We will just look, Zixthorn promised. No one will know. What they didn't see was Lisa Wright, following at a careful distance. She had decided not to report them yet, but she couldn't let them proceed unsupervised. Whatever they found in those archives, she needed to know exactly what information about humans was being stored at the university. As Clavex pressed her hand against the security panel, her skin glowing with the copied authorization pattern, the door slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, rows of data storage units glowed with a soft blue light. Look for anything related to humans or Earth or Sol system, Zixthorn instructed as they entered. What they didn't expect was to find archivist Plobin already inside, his ancient eyes staring at them with an unreadable expression as the door closed behind them. I have been waiting for someone to come looking, the old archivist said softly. It happens every few years. A curious student, a questioning mind. We can explain, Clavex began, her skin rapidly losing its mimicked pattern. No need, Plobin said, his wrinkled hand gesturing them forward. I was there, you see, during the event. I saw with my own eyes what humans become when they are truly threatened. Zixthorn and Clavex exchanged glances. What do you mean, what they become? Zixthorn asked. The archivist's eyes seemed to look into the distant past. It's not what they are, he whispered. It's what they become when threatened. The old archivist Plobin moved deeper into the restricted section, gesturing for Zixthorn and Clavex to follow. His ancient body moved slowly between the glowing data storage units. The blue light made his pale skin look almost ghostly. I should report you both for breaking into this section, Plobin said, but there was no threat in his voice. Yet every century someone needs to learn the truth. Perhaps it is better this way. Zixthorn's tentacles rippled with excitement while Clavex's metallic skin dimmed with anxiety. The archivist led them to a sealed door at the far end of the room. What is in there? Zixthorn asked. The Sol incident files, Plobin replied. The complete record of humanity's only interstellar war. The archivist placed his hand on a security panel. The door slid open to reveal a small room containing a single data cube glowing with red light. Red was the universal color for dangerous knowledge in galactic society. 300 years ago, Plobin began, I was a junior data keeper assigned to the diplomatic corps. I was present when the reports came in about the Drekthul Empire's expansion into the Sol system. They thought Earth would be an easy conquest. The Drekthul? Clavex's antenna twitched. I thought they were extinct. They are, Plobin said simply. That is why humans are forbidden from galactic warfare. Unknown to them, Lisa Wright had followed them into the archives and was now listening from behind a tall storage unit. Her heart beat faster. She had studied the official human history, but very few humans knew the complete details of what had happened during the first contact. War Plobin's hand hovered over the data cube. The Drekthul were a powerful empire, technologically superior to humans by at least 2 centuries. They attacked without warning, destroying human outposts on Mars and their moon. They expected a quick surrender. And the humans fought back? Zixthorn asked. No, Plobin said. They did something no other species in recorded galactic history had ever done. They didn't just fight back. They transformed their entire civilization into a war machine in less than 1 Earth year. The archivist touched the cube. A holographic display appeared, showing the Sol system as it was 3 centuries ago. The 9 planets orbited their yellow sun, with Earth glowing blue at the 3rd position. Human leaders called it total war. Every factory converted to produce weapons. Every scientist focused on military research. They abandoned ethical restraints on technology development. Children learned combat skills in schools. They did not behave as a rational species facing a superior force. The hologram shifted to show grainy footage of human ships. They were crude compared to Drekthul vessels. The first human counterattacks were pitiful, Plobin continued. Their weapons barely damaged Drekthul shields, but they kept coming. When conventional weapons failed, they rammed their ships into Drekthul vessels. When they lost battles, they fought harder in the next one. When the Drekthul destroyed one of their colonies, they showed no signs of surrender. Instead, their attacks grew more intense. Clavix's skin had turned a dull gray. That defies all rational conflict theory. Species are supposed to calculate their chances and surrender when defeat is certain. It preserves the population. Humans do not think that way, Plobin said. The Drekthul learned this too late. The hologram changed again, showing a massive fleet of human vessels. They were still primitive compared to standard galactic designs, but there were thousands of them. It took the humans only 11 months to build this fleet, Plobin explained. They stripped entire planets in their system for resources, and then they launched their counteroffensive. The image shifted to show human soldiers in battle. Lisa. Wright flinched as she watched her ancestors fight with a ferocity that seemed alien even to her. The Drekthul expected the humans to attack their fleet, Plobin said. Instead, the humans bypassed the main forces and struck directly at the Drekthul homeworld. No species had ever done that before. It was not considered civilized. Zixthorn leaned closer to the hologram. What happened? The humans gave the Drekthul one chance to surrender and leave the Sol system forever. When they refused, the humans used weapons they had developed in that single year of war. Weapons designed specifically to target Drekthul biology. Within days, the entire Drekthul civilization collapsed. Clavix made a sound of disbelief. But the Drekthul controlled over 50 systems. They had been a galactic power for millennia. Yes, Plobin nodded slowly. And they ceased to exist as a species because they threatened humans with extinction. The hologram shut off. The archivist looked tired, as if the memory itself drained his energy. After the war, the remaining galactic powers met with human representatives. We expected demands, territorial claims, or reparations. Instead, the humans requested something no victorious species had ever asked for. What did they want? Zixthorn asked. They asked to be prohibited from interstellar warfare, Plobin said. They requested galactic laws preventing them from building military fleets or joining conflicts between other species. They recognized what they had become during the war, and they feared it. Lisa stepped out from her hiding place. All 3 aliens turned to look at her, startled by her sudden appearance. It's called the wartime transformation doctrine in our history, she said quietly. We teach our children about it as a warning. Plobin's eyes widened. You are human. Lisa nodded. I am one of 12 humans permitted to study off-world. My real name is Lisa Wright. I'm a diplomatic observer. You should not be here, the archivist said, but his voice lacked conviction. Neither should they, Lisa replied, gesturing to the 2 students. But perhaps it's time for more understanding between our peoples. A sudden alarm blared through the archives. Red lights flashed along the walls. Security breach detected, an automated voice announced. Unauthorized access to restricted section. We need to leave, Klavex said, her skin rippling with panic patterns. Lisa shook her head. Too late. Security will be here in moments. What will they do to us? Zixthorn asked, his tentacles trembling. Expulsion most likely, Plobin said. Breaking into the archives is a serious offense. Lisa took a deep breath. Unless we can convince them this was authorized. I have diplomatic status. I might be able to help, but you'll need to trust me. Before anyone could respond, the main door to the archives slid open. Dean Vossler stood there, flanked by university security guards. His 8 eyes blinked in sequence as he surveyed the scene. Archivist Plobin, explain this security breach, the dean demanded. Plobin opened his mouth to speak, but Lisa stepped forward. Dean Vossler, my name is Lisa Wright, Human Diplomatic Liaison. These students are part of a special cultural exchange program I am overseeing. I requested Archivist Plobin's assistance in accessing certain historical records. The dean's eyes narrowed. No such program was approved by my office. It was approved directly by Ambassador Elizabeth Davis under Section 12 of the Human Integration Protocol, Lisa said confidently, even though she was making it up entirely. I can arrange a direct communication with Earth's diplomatic office. If you require verification, the tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a blade. Finally, the dean spoke. That won't be necessary. However, I will need full documentation by tomorrow, and this program must follow proper channels in the future. Lisa nodded respectfully. Of course, Dean Vossler. It won't happen again. As the dean and security guards left, Zixthorn, Klavex, and Plobin all stared at Lisa in amazement. How did you do that? Zixthorn asked. Lisa gave a small smile. Another human trait. We're very good at improvising under pressure. The next day, Lisa Wright sat in a small meeting room with Zixthorn and Klavex. She had spent most of the night sending urgent messages to Earth, explaining the situation and requesting guidance. The response had surprised her. Instead of ordering a cover-up or punishment for the curious students, her superiors had approved a limited information-sharing session. I still can't believe we're not being expelled, Klavex said, her metallic skin shifting through nervous patterns. Or that you're really human, Zixthorn added, his forehands fidgeting on the table. You look so normal. Lisa smiled. What were you expecting? Fangs? Claws? We're physically unimpressive, remember? The door slid open and a holographic projection unit floated into the room. Behind it walked a tall, gray-haired human man wearing a simple blue uniform with small silver stars on the collar. Admiral Ben Harrison, Lisa said, standing quickly. I didn't expect someone of your rank to respond to my request. The Admiral nodded at her. When the request involves sharing first contact war information with non-humans, it goes straight to the top. He turned to the 2 alien students. I understand you've been curious about why humans are restricted from galactic warfare. Zixthorn Zohaik, tentacles rippled with excitement. Yes, sir. Our education includes the military history of every known species except humans. For good reason, the Admiral said as he activated the holographic unit. What I'm about to show you is normally restricted to high-level diplomatic personnel. The room darkened, and a 3-dimensional image of Earth appeared, rotating slowly. 312 years ago, humanity had just begun to colonize our solar system, Harrison explained. We had settlements on Mars, mining operations, on our moon, and research stations orbiting several planets. We had not yet developed faster-than-light travel. The hologram shifted to show large curved ships entering the solar system. The Drekthul arrived without warning. Their first action was to destroy our Mars colony. Over 10,000 people died in minutes. Lisa noticed that both alien students flinched at the casualty number. In galactic warfare, most conflicts ended with minimal loss of life, as species typically surrendered when defeat became mathematically certain. The Drekthul expected us to submit immediately, Harrison continued. Instead, our response confused them. The hologram showed news footage from Earth. People gathering in huge crowds, factories being converted, children helping collect scrap metal. What you're seeing is something unique to humans, Harrison said. When faced with an existential threat, Humans don't calculate odds of success. We unite. Every division between nations, religions, and political groups was set aside. Our entire global economy shifted to war production within weeks. But that's economically irrational, Klevex objected. The resource expenditure alone would cripple any society. Rationality isn't always our strong suit, Harrison replied with a grim smile. Especially when our survival is threatened. The hologram changed again to show human soldiers training, scientists working in labs, and engineers building ships. The Drechthul made two critical mistakes, Harrison explained. First, after destroying our Mars colony, they paused their attack to observe our response, expecting submission. This gave us time. Second, they didn't understand human psychology. The image shifted to show early battles. Small human ships were easily destroyed by Drechthul weapons. We lost every early engagement, Harrison said. But with each defeat, we learned. We adapted our weapons, our tactics, our ships. The Drechthul couldn't understand why we kept fighting when victory seemed mathematically impossible. Another figure entered the room. This one wasn't human. The tall, thin being had gray-green skin and large, sad eyes. Lisa recognized the species, a Thrixian, one of the few races that had interacted with both humans and the Drechthul. This is Planetary Representative Thrix, Harrison introduced. He observed the later stages of the conflict as part of a neutral monitoring team. Thrix bowed slightly. What the Admiral is not telling you is how terrifying it was to watch. The Drechthul had conquered 17 species before encountering humans. All had surrendered when defeat became apparent. The Drechthul had no concept of a species that would fight to the last individual. The hologram showed a new series of battles. Now the human ships were different, darker, with strange weapons attachments. 8 months into the war, Harrison said, we began to turn the tide. Our scientists had worked without sleep, testing weapons specifically designed to target Drechthul biology and technology. Zixthorn leaned forward. You mean biological weapons? Those are forbidden in all civilized warfare. They weren't forbidden then, Harrison said quietly. There were no galactic treaties governing human behavior yet. We were fighting for our survival with the only tools we had. Representative Thrix shuddered visibly. The Drechthul never considered that an inferior technological species would develop specific countermeasures so quickly. No other species they had encountered had ever done so. The hologram showed the final phase of the war, human fleets bypassing Drechthul defenses and striking directly at their homeworld and core systems. When we launched our counteroffensive, Harrison continued, we offered the Drechthul one chance to surrender and leave our system forever. They refused, believing we were bluffing. We weren't. The hologram showed the aftermath. Drechthul ships, adrift in space, planets under quarantine, the once mighty empire collapsing within weeks. The weapons we used targeted their neural systems, Harrison explained. Not immediately lethal, but it destroyed their ability to use their technology. Their civilization collapsed. Within 1 generation, they had regressed to a pre-industrial state. They never recovered. The hologram shut off and the lights came back on. Both alien students sat in shocked silence. After the war, Harrison said, when other galactic civilizations contacted us, they were horrified by what we had done. Not because we defended ourselves, but because of how thoroughly we had defeated an enemy that should have crushed us by all logical calculations. We requested the prohibition ourselves, Lisa added. Our leaders recognized what we had become during the war and feared it. I don't understand, Klavik said, her antenna twitching in confusion. If you won, why? Would you fear your own abilities? A new person entered the room. He was human, younger than Harrison, with dark skin and intense eyes. He carried several data tablets. That's what I'm here to explain, he said. I'm Alan Kennedy, human historian specializing in the First Contact War. The prohibition wasn't to protect other species from us. It was to protect us from ourselves. What do you mean? Zixthorn asked. Kennedy placed the tablets on the table. During the war, human civilization changed in ways that alarmed even us. Our scientific progress accelerated beyond all previous. rates, but so did our capacity for violence. We abandoned ethical restraints that had taken centuries to develop. We became something we had spent thousands of years trying to evolve beyond. Representative Thrix nodded solemnly. In my report, to the Galactic Council I wrote, humans do not fight wars like other species. They do not fight to win territory or resources. When truly threatened, they fight as if their only goal is to ensure that nothing threatens them ever again. Admiral Harrison's face was grim. After seeing what we became during those 3 years of war, our leaders made a decision. We asked to be restricted from galactic warfare not because we couldn't win, but because we were afraid of what winning cost us. Alan Kennedy looked directly at the 2 alien students. The prohibition isn't a punishment. It's a safety measure we requested, because the galaxy hasn't seen what humans truly become when fighting for survival, and we hope it never will. 2 days later, Zixthorn and Clavex found themselves in a small transport ship approaching Earth. Lisa had arranged special diplomatic clearance for them to visit the planet, something rarely granted to non-humans, especially students. I can't believe we're actually going to Earth, Zixthorn said, his tentacles rippling with excitement as he pressed against the viewport. The blue planet grew larger as they approached. I'm not sure I want to see it, Clavex admitted. Her metallic skin had been dim ever since the briefing with Admiral Harrison. What we learned about humans is disturbing. Lisa, who was piloting the small craft, glanced back at them. That's exactly why this visit was approved. There's something important about us that you need to understand, and you can only see it on Earth. The ship entered Earth's atmosphere, passing through clouds, until the landscape below became visible. Green forests, blue lakes, and the gray outlines of cities spread across the land. It looked so peaceful, Clavex observed, surprise evident in her voice. What did you expect? Lisa asked. Weapons, military bases, training grounds. Clavex's antenna twitched. After what we learned about your species, I thought your whole planet would be a war machine. Lisa guided the ship toward a large city built around a lake. That's what you need to understand. We're not naturally warlike. In fact, before the Drekthul arrived, we had been working for centuries to become less violent. The ship landed on a small pad near a large domed building with Earth Historical Museum, written above its entrance in multiple languages. As they disembarked, a human woman with short gray hair and kind eyes approached them. Welcome to Geneva, she said. I'm Susan Parker, curator of the War Memorial Museum. Lisa tells me you've been learning about the First Contact War. Zixthorn nodded his large head. Yes. We were shown classified records about the conflict. Susan smiled, but her eyes remained sad. Those records tell what happened, but not how we felt about it. That's what I want to show you today. Inside the museum, the first exhibit was not about war at all. Instead, it displayed art, music, literature, and scientific achievements from before the Drekthul arrival. This was human civilization before the war, Susan explained. We had largely ended conflicts between our nations. Poverty was decreasing. Art and science were flourishing. We were beginning to explore our solar system peacefully. She led them to the next gallery, which showed the Mars colony before its destruction. Happy families lived in domed structures. Children played in special low-gravity parks. Scientists worked in laboratories. 10,437 people died when the Drekthul destroyed Mars colony, Susan said quietly. Most were civilians, families, children. The next gallery showed the transformation after the attack. Factories converted to weapon production, scientists working around the clock, people lining up to volunteer for military service. We call it the Great Transformation, Susan explained. In less than a year, our entire civilization changed. Every resource was directed toward a single goal: survival. A tall man in a formal uniform approached them. He had a stern face and carried himself with rigid discipline. This is Governor Frank Wilson, Susan introduced him. He oversees human compliance with the Treaty of Sol, the treaty that restricts humans from galactic warfare, Zixthorn said, recognizing the name. Governor Wilson nodded. My job is to ensure we never break those restrictions. Not because we can't, but because we shouldn't. I don't understand, Klavex said. If another species attacked you, wouldn't you want to defend yourselves? Of course, Wilson replied. The treaty allows us to defend Earth and our colonies. What it prevents is our participation in wider galactic conflicts or the development of weapons that could threaten other civilizations. Susan led them to a solemn hall where the names of those who died in the war were inscribed on black marble walls. There were thousands upon thousands of names. What you need to understand, Susan said, is that we didn't want to become what we did during the war. We had spent most of our history trying to overcome our violent tendencies. The war forced us to embrace our darkest nature. An elderly woman in a wheelchair approached them. Despite her age, her eyes were sharp and alert. This is Olivia Martinez, Susan introduced her. She was a child on Mars when the Drek-Thul attacked, one of the few survivors. I lost my parents and my brother that day, Olivia said, her voice steady despite the painful memory. I was only 6 years old. I remember the sky turning red as their ships descended. I remember the sound of the colony dome breaking. How did you survive? Zixthorn asked gently. Pure luck. I was in a sealed education pod with 5 other children when the attack came. The pod was designed to withstand environmental failures. It kept us alive until rescue ships arrived. Olivia looked at the alien students with intensity. After the war, I became a peace advocate. I fought against using the weapons we had developed on other species, not because I forgave the Drek-Thul, but because I had seen what rage and fear did to us. She gestured around the memorial hall. This place doesn't celebrate our victory. It mourns what we lost. Not just lives, but our humanity. During those 3 years, we became something we had spent centuries trying not to be. Governor Wilson stepped forward. After the war, our leaders made a choice. We had developed weapons that could have given us control over large portions of the galaxy. We could have built an empire to rival the Drek-Thul. Instead, we chose to restrict ourselves. We asked for the prohibition, Olivia added. Not to protect other species, but to protect ourselves from what we become when truly threatened. They continued through the museum, seeing more exhibits about the war and its aftermath. The final room contained a simple glass case. Inside was an ordinary-looking metal cylinder about the size of a human arm. What is that? Klavex asked. The last remaining prototype of the Drek-Thul neural disruptor, Susan explained. The weapon that ended their civilization. We keep it as a reminder of a line we never want to cross again. As they prepared to leave the museum, they passed a garden where children played, human children of different colors and sizes laughing and running without fear. This is what we fought to protect, Lisa said, watching the children. Not territory or resources or power, just the right to exist peacefully. Zixthorn looked at the playing children, then back at the museum. I think I understand now. Your species isn't naturally more violent than others. You're just more determined when threatened. More than that, Olivia said, her old eyes watching the children. We recognized what we became during the war and we chose a different path afterward. The prohibition wasn't forced on us. We requested it because we knew ourselves better than anyone else could. The elderly woman reached out and took Zixthorn's hand in her weathered one. Tell your people this. Humans aren't forbidden from galactic warfare because we're monsters. We're forbidden because we refuse to become monsters again. 1 month later, the Grand Lecture Hall of the Galactic University was filled to capacity. Word had spread about the special presentation by Zixthorn and Klavex, approved by both university administration and Earth's diplomatic corps. Students and faculty from all departments had come to hear what the 2 students had discovered about humanity. Zixthorn stood at the podium, his blue skin slightly darker with nervousness. His tentacles moved slowly as he looked out at the crowd. Klavex stood beside him, her metallic skin gleaming under the lights. Thank you all for coming, Zixthorn began. 1 month ago, Klavex and I asked a simple question in Professor Murdoch's class. Why are humans forbidden from galactic warfare? That question led us on a journey none of us expected. At the back of the hall, Lisa Wright sat with a small delegation, from Earth, including Alan Kennedy, the historian they had met, and a new human diplomat named Paul Johnson. Professor Murdoch floated near them in his hover chair, his ancient eyes fixed on his students. Most of you know the official explanation, Zixthorn continued, that after the Drekthul conflict, humans were considered too dangerous to participate in galactic military actions. What you don't know is that this prohibition was not imposed on humans. They requested it themselves. A murmur ran through the audience. Klavek stepped forward. We have been granted special permission to share certain facts about human history and psychology, she said. Not to frighten you, but to promote understanding between our peoples. The lights dimmed, and a holographic display activated. It showed scenes from Earth's history that the human delegation had approved for sharing. Humans evolved on a planet where they were not the strongest species, Klavex explained. Unlike many intelligent races who evolved as apex predators, humans developed intelligence as a survival mechanism. The display showed early humans using simple tools to hunt animals much larger than themselves. This created a unique evolutionary path, Zixthorn added. Most sentient species evolved with natural surrender mechanisms. When defeat becomes certain, they withdraw to preserve the population. Humans never developed this instinct. The display shifted to show humans throughout their history, working together to overcome challenges, building shelters against harsh weather, creating medicines to fight disease, developing technologies to compensate for their physical limitations. The most remarkable thing about humans, Klavex continued, is not their capacity for violence. It's their capacity for adaptation and cooperation under threat. When faced with extinction-level dangers, humans don't calculate odds of success. They unite, innovate, and fight regardless of the cost. Grand Chancellor Shinvara, head of the Galactic Alliance, had arrived during the presentation and now sat in the front row. Her crystalline form caught the light as she leaned forward with interest. After studying human history, Zixthorn said, we believe the prohibition against human warfare isn't because humans are naturally violent. In fact, their history shows they've worked hard to overcome violent tendencies. The display changed to show the Earth Museum they had visited, with its memorials to the war dead. What makes humans dangerous, Klavex explained, is what they become when threatened with extinction. They call it total war, a concept alien to most galactic species. They can transform their entire civilization into a war machine, abandon ethical constraints, and fight with a determination that defies rational analysis. And most importantly, Zixthorn added, they recognize this about themselves. After defeating the Drekthul, they could have built an empire. Instead, they asked to be restricted from warfare, not because they couldn't win, but because they feared the cost of winning to their own humanity. The Chancellor rose from her seat. Students, what you're suggesting challenges 3 centuries of galactic policy toward humans. With respect, Chancellor, Klavex replied, we believe the current policy is based on fear rather than understanding. Humans aren't restricted because they're monsters. They're restricted because they refuse to become monsters again. From the back of the hall, Elizabeth Davis, the human ambassador to the aligned world, stood up. She hadn't been part of the original delegation, and her arrival caused a stir in the audience. Chancellor Shinvara, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the hall. Humanity has respected the Treaty of Sol for 3 centuries. We've limited our military development, avoided conflicts, and focused on peaceful integration with galactic society. Perhaps it's time to reconsider some aspects of the treaty. The Chancellor's crystalline form shimmered as she considered this. What exactly are you proposing, Ambassador? Not an end to all restrictions, Elizabeth clarified. We understand the concerns about human warfare, but perhaps there's a middle ground, a way for humans to contribute to galactic peace without risking what we became during the Drekthul conflict. Zixthorn stepped forward eagerly. We've been studying this very question. Humans have psychological traits that make them dangerous in warfare, but those same traits could be invaluable in diplomacy and conflict resolution. Explain, the Chancellor requested. Humans don't give up, Klavex said simply. When most species would calculate that a negotiation is futile, Humans keep trying. They think outside conventional patterns. They're willing to take personal risks for potential peace. Ambassador Davis nodded. We propose a new role for humans in galactic society, not as warriors but as mediators, a specialized human diplomatic corps trained to resolve conflicts before they reach the point where our more problematic traits would emerge. The Chancellor was quiet for a long moment. This is an interesting proposal. It would require significant discussion among the Alliance members. All we ask is that you consider it, Ambassador Davis replied. After 3 centuries of isolation, we believe it's time for humans to contribute more to galactic peace. Professor, Murdoch's hover chair floated forward. I have taught interspecies combat ethics for 70 years. In all that time, I've told my students that humans are forbidden from warfare because they're too dangerous. Perhaps I should have said they're too valuable to waste on fighting. As the formal presentation ended, the hall buzzed with conversation. Zixthorn and Clavex found themselves surrounded by curious students and faculty. Lisa Wright approached them with a smile. You did well. This could be the beginning of a real change in how the galaxy sees humans. What happens now? Clavex asked. The Chancellor has agreed to form a special committee to study revising the Treaty of Sol, Lisa replied. It will take time, but it's a start. Zixthorn's tentacles rippled with satisfaction. And we'll be part of it. The university has approved our request to continue researching human psychology as our graduate project. As new students filed into the hall for the next class, Professor Murdoch hovered at the entrance. His voice carried clearly as he addressed them. Welcome to Interspecies Combat Ethics. Today we begin with a new chapter. Why some species choose not to fight, not because they cannot win, but because they fear what victory would cost them.